What up, party people? I'm Jack and I do 3D websites. Now, today I want to talk about a really special tool to me. This is Spline tool. It is a 3D modeling tool, collaborative. You can use it on the web, so it doesn't slow down your laptop massively. It's a really, really powerful little tool. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the key features of Spline, including 1, making and manipulating 3D objects, 2, adding interactivity and animation, 3, materials and shading, 4, collaboration and how to actually do this in the context of a team, and then 5, exporting options. How to make it responsive, how to make sure that you are getting the right export option for your purpose. Let's dive in. Spline. Create an account if you haven't already, obviously getting started. And if you're trying to just get in and play with it and you've already had a play, obviously just click login. Now, you don't need to pay to use Spline, right? You can actually get in, make stuff, and it's only when you export things that you'll need to pay. So it's free to get in, have a try. Now, if you want to get a new file, you obviously just click in the top right here. But what you can also do is go to the community tab and look at all these amazing projects that people have already done. You can click into these projects and then you can actually remix them. Now, what that means is essentially you can clone it. As much as today I want to show you some basics about how to create stuff, definitely just get in, remix stuff. It'll go straight to your account. So if you then go to My Files, you'll see it. And then you can actually get in and see how people have made stuff. You can actually move this around by by putting 2 fingers on your keyboard and just moving it around. And then if you want to actually move the whole scene, you can hold Option and you can drag, okay? So that's just a helpful little start. And then if you double click into stuff, you can see all the different things that are going on in here. You've got these heads, you've got these granules. Now, this is quite a complex animation. Today we'll just, spline scene, I should say. Today we'll just, ooh, look at that, that's kind of creepy. We'll just look at some basic bits and bobs here, but very, very cool work from, who was that by? Hey Vlad. Awesome. I'm going to give him a follow because that's a really, really cool project. So just in case you open a new file and you're like, I don't know how to start this, just remember that you can go to the community tab and see loads of cool things. Now, when you open a new project, you can choose one of these pre-made options that are going to really help you get off the ground running, right? But let's say you're like, you know what, I don't want any of these things, I just want to do things myself. You're going to have this rectangle and directional light in here. Now, normally what I do is I just delete both of these things so I have a blank canvas. Now, on the left here, you've got all your different assets. Now, obviously, right now we have no assets whatsoever in here, but we have this column here, this modal here. Now, what you can do is you can go to the library down here, you can click on an object and it will show up in your spline scene. And just as before, we can use 2 fingers to scroll on the trackpad to move this around, or we can actually click on Alt or Option and then move this spline scene around, okay? Now, you can also import things. So say you had another model, so you can actually go to something like Sketchfab and you can actually download models for free. Like a lot of these are for free, guys. So anyway, you can import things, you can do sounds. So for example, if you're making a game and you want someone to jump up and down, and as they jump and it makes a sound, you can do that. You can import images as well. So here's an image that I had from earlier. So we've got this image here. you can do a lot of cool stuff from just this left panel, okay? Then on the top, we can actually make stuff. So, for example, if we were like, oh, let's make a circle, we can do that. We can do all sorts of basic shapes. We can do helix. We can do all sorts of different shapes in here, right? And you're like, okay, cool, Jack. Yeah, nice. Now what? These look ugly. I want to change this. We can actually hide different elements if we want to get rid of them as well, which is quite handy. So we've got 3 different shapes. They're all ugly. Let's jazz them up a bit. So over here, we've got all sorts of different things. We've got states. We'll talk about that in the animation section. We've got sizes of stuff. We've got the number of sides. We've got materials. Now, materials is probably the funnest bit to show you right now. We've got colors, images, videos, depth. You've got all sorts of different things that you can do with this, guys. Now, if we go to matcap has it's a really, really powerful part of Spline. Instead of using lights in your scene, which might slow down your scene, it means that you have a far heavier file to load if you're, say, embedding this on a website. What you can do is use matcap. Now, what's really cool about matcap is it's essentially a layer which has light inherent in the material. Okay, this looks like I've got a light pointing at this. Okay, but as you can see from this file here, there's no lights. There are no lights pointing at this file. It's just a material that has an inherent light property. Now, what that means is that obviously your file size is going to be a lot lighter. So matcaps are your friend, okay? Now, important to note, this is a lot like Photoshop. You can drag these up and down to change the properties of this asset. Now, what you might want to do is have this at, say, 10%, so this is slightly grayed out. Or potentially you don't want this at all. Let's get rid of that, actually. Let's move that above the lighting. And then we're like, you know what? We actually want to add some kind of texture to this, right? Well, let's get noise, for example, okay? Now what we can do is change these to various different options, but play around with these, see what works for whatever you're trying to create. It might require a little bit of play to find out exactly what you want from this, right? You might be like, you know what? I want to kind of red overlay. Let's say kind of, that's actually really ugly, isn't it? Let's make that more like orange, okay? And you're like, ooh, Jack, that's really ugly. Why are you doing that? Well, what you can then do is click on overlay. You can actually change the properties of this. And I don't know if you can see this very well, but you've got quite a subtle effect there with this textured, this textured overlay going on here. And that's just overlaying the matcap. So if we were to turn that right down, you can actually have a lot more subtle effects going on. So imagine this, right? You might make a lot of different layers. You might have, let's change this to a displacement layer, okay? Let's turn this right up. If you actually hold the middle, you see this little arrow that pops up. It's really cool. You can actually increase or decrease from there. But we've got this displacement layer. We've made this crazy orb effect. Oh my god, that's wild. It looks like some kind of glass mush. You can see how quickly we can manipulate things and do quite interesting things with this object, right? Now, let's have a little look at maybe doing a gradient effect as well. This is going to look cool, guys. Okay, nice. Let's make that. Let's move that up. I don't think we want that, do we? Okay, we've got this kind of glass crazy orb thing going on. Let's get rid of these. Now, we've got this. Now you're like, okay, cool, let's change the background. So we can actually click on this background and then change the background color very quickly as well. So that's going to completely change the look and feel of this. I actually think a really dark background might look really cool. Okay, so we've looked a little bit about how to manipulate objects. There's plenty more that can be done as well. If we were to, say, make, we could put some text in here. So let's say, wow, this is a wild tool. We can do that very, very easily and quickly. We can add fonts. We can change the font. We can actually increase the depth of this font. So you see how we've now got a font which is now in 3D, which is quite fun. If you were to play around with this on a website or something, it's great. There's so much to talk about within Spline. I recommend just checking out the tutorials in here. There is so much you can do. So I feel like it will be quite overwhelming in this video to talk too much about all the different things that you can do. But there's a kind of quick overview of how quickly you can create a shape and then manipulate it, okay? And a little bit about the materials panel here. Let's move on to 2, interactivity and animation. Now, in this section, what I want to do is to have a kind of orb going in and out, like a kind of heart pumping almost, right? So we've got this shape. Now, if we look at the top here, we've got states and events. States are what it currently is at the base state to the end state. Now, we can add as many states as we want in here, right? But for now, let's just create 2 different states. We've got the state and then we've got the base state. So let's say we want the displacement to go from 0 to whatever, 300 or something. In fact, 300 might be a bit mental. Let's go 150, okay? And let's also give this a larger, let's actually make this a lot larger as well. Wow, this is going to be mad. Okay, so we've got base state, state, okay? And I also want to, let's change the material from something that's super shiny at the base state to something like that. Ooh, mama, that's mad. Let's change that to, actually I quite like the original. Should we just keep to the original? Let's keep to the original. Okay. Now, if you're like, actually, Jack, I want to change the material from the base state to the state, what you can do is add a displacement. Sorry, you can add a mat cap which has the state that you want it to go to, which would be 0 at the base state, and then at the state, you would get that to 100. And then we can do the inverse over here. So we can turn this down to 0, and then we can turn this up to 100. Oop. Okay, nice. Okay, let's see how this is going to look in an animation. So we've got these 2 different states. Now, what we need to do is to add a transition which will take it from the base state to the state. Now let's make this over 10 seconds, say. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this an infinite loop. And ping pong means it goes ping to the end of the second state, i.e. this state here. And then it's going to go in reverse back in that order. So imagine like 2 people playing table tennis, ping pong. Okay, whereas ping pong reverse is the opposite. This will make more sense when we have a look at it together. Okay, so it's changing, the material's morphing, and now we go into something that's like this kind of crazy flower with that effect, okay? Now, sorry, I meant to make that ping pong. Let's change that so that we have something that's a little bit faster. You see what I'm doing with the sound effects there? That's not on Spline, that's just jackredley.design. You can pay me to come and record some sound effects for you another day. That's animation, okay? You can do all sorts of different stuff in here as well for interaction, okay? So on mouse up, we can actually trigger this animation, okay? So let's have a look at that. So if we go mouse up, you see how mad that effect is? Crazy times. Okay, so something to be said at this stage is that yes, you can do a hell of a lot inside Spline in terms of creating game control, doing all sorts of different things. What I would warn you though is that if you're doing this on a website, it's actually better to do this on the website, i.e. embed your file on a website and then do the interactions within Framer or Webflow or whatever you're using, because you're going to want to manipulate things on page transitions or page, what's the word I'm looking for? How far down the page the animation goes might change the speed at which things happen, etc. And you can have more granular control, I found. I was doing a website for a client where essentially what they wanted is this animation to start at 20% of the scroll position and then expand but stay sticky on scroll. So turns and then sticks and then scrolls down. Now, what we were doing initially is we were essentially having a animation. This was all in Spline originally. You see how janky that is? It doesn't quite land properly. It works after a little bit. You see, that's the text is coming in too early, and then it disappears again, and then it comes back. And we were having problems with this, and what I found is that actually doing the animation within Webflow worked a lot better. But play around with this, see what works for you. Okay, so back to this. We've got our Spline file. We've got base state and state. We've got some crazy animation things happening in here, and we can do a lot with that. If we go to this, you can actually see from the start you can do so many different things. If you're creating an app, you can do things linking to other APIs. If you're creating a game, you can do things like that. Do things like sound effects, etc. And you can actually share this file as a public URL. So let's say you're creating a game. You can do this all within my.spline design with your file name, and this can be shared online right now as it is. Okay, it's pretty crazy. I noticed while we were doing this, you see how we've got this weird effect going on. There's some things that you try in Spline and then you're like, hold on, that's not quite right. Let's go back and check that out. So we've got a matcap here, and you see how we've got both on visibility, front and back. If we click both, then what that means is then you're gonna have the effects on both sides, and that should have fixed the problem. One other really cool thing to show you very, very quickly is this cloner tool, okay? So if you click cloner, what you can do is you can actually clone really fast a ton of exactly the same object. Now, that's cool, fine. But what's more impressive for me is you can then make things radial or grid or object. So if we go grid, obviously you've got a grid effect. These then can be, let's get the original one, and then we can increase the size of that grid. Let's say we want it 5 across, 5 deep. You see how crazy that is, guys? How quickly we've made something like that. It looks like this kind of wild effect. Now if we play this, whoa, you see how beautiful that is? And we've just made that in about 2 seconds, guys. You know? Okay, so I'm getting excited. Sorry. But I'm actually not sorry. Okay, let's just turn this back here. Let's do radial. Oh my God, how beautiful. Let's spread those out a little bit, shall we? So what we can do is we can go radius 500. Let's go radius 750. And we're going to start this just at the top there. So what's going to happen is it's going to go whoosh. And we can also change the alignment. So if we wanted them to align on the y-axis, then that shows the middle. If we don't want to show the middle one, we can just click hide on there. We can change the rotation. Oh my God, this tool is so cool. Okay, let's just leave it at that. And we've created this incredible kind of bouquet, just completely accidentally. How amazing is that? Oh, by the way, something that's really, really good to note is that if you click this percentage, then what you can do is you can center in object. And what that means is that your object will be centered in the middle of the screen, which is just really handy if you've been like moving around and doing stuff and you're like, how can I get it back to like the middle? Just click center in object, or you can just click S. Super helpful little shortcut there. Cool. We've looked at materials and shading already. So I'm not going to touch on that too much. Collaboration. Now, something that's really, really useful to note is that say you're like, hey, I want other people to be able to see this. Then what you can do is you can actually share this, this page with other people. So let's say we've got this animation, we've made it nice, we like it. Then we can click share in the top right, just up here. And we can actually invite people to look at the file, edit the file, or only people invited to open this link will be able to see it. So you just whack in their name here, and then you can click invite. Alternatively, you can just publish this for the community to actually use themselves, which is quite cool. So if you get invited to a project, you'll get a little notification in the team section here, and it will be like, whoever has invited you to the team, and you can just join. So from a collaboration standpoint, it's pretty epic that you can do that so fast. Now, let's talk about exporting. We've got our file. Oop, what's going on here? We had our file. What's happening there, Spline? Let's just reload that. I've probably absolutely hammering this from the perspective. There it is. I've just changed the states. Let's say we're like, we actually don't want this to animate at all. We just want this state to be the base state. What you can do is you can right click and then you can push changes to base state. So now we've only got base state there. It's kind of a nice little hack for you guys there too. Okay, we've got this. Now, we know how to collaborate with other people. It's perfect. Now what do? We want to export it, okay? So what we can do is we've got various different options for export. Before you export stuff, what I recommend is hiding the background color, but allowing page scroll, allowing cursor. If you want orbit and pan, what that means is that you essentially can do this. So you can click your mouse and then move it around. Maybe you don't want that to happen though. So what you can do is you can actually go into the play settings and click no, no, no. We don't want people to zoom. We don't want soft orbit. We don't want any of this stuff. No zoom. We'll allow page scroll. And then on hover, you can do some quite cool things. So like you can basically hover to the camera will pan as you move your mouse, which is quite cool. And you can actually change how sensitive that is quite easily. So let's just go back to there. You see how we've got on hover, behavior, orbit, camera. Let's change the sensitivity to something like 10, dampening. Actually, we'll put the dampening up. And reset if hover out. Cool. You see how subtle this is now? Ooh, just a tiny bit. So it's very much dampened. It's slowed down. So we can change that super fast. Okay, cool. Let's turn that all off. Now, some important things to have a little look at here. We've got update public URL, and that's going to update this whole scene. So now, if we get this whole spline scene that we've just got as a public link, this one, myspline.design untitled, if we then click update public URL and then refresh this link, we'll see that this is now what we've just updated this to. So super subtle, hover animation, etc. Okay. Now, important to note, if you go to overview, you will see performance. Now, we have got a spline scene which actually is really good loading time. Again, the reason for that is because we're not using loads of lights. We've just got map cap material and actually like very few materials and complex things going on. Another thing that could be reduced is reducing the number of polygons here. We've got unused assets, so let's just get rid of that. We can just click that off. Clone polygons, fine. I mean, we've got a scene which has tons and tons of edges. So using the displacement, it's actually a lot better than adding new edges to your file. So just using a displacement as the material, it's a lot better than adding tons and tons of new sides or shapes, but this is as good as it's going to get. So we've got performance here, that's great, and then we can click update public URL. So we can then go to viewer and embed this in a project. So if you're doing this for a web project, you can embed it there, and that's going to be absolutely gravy. Maybe though, you're like, you know what, we're actually not going to have this interactive. What we're going to do is we're going to record a video. You can actually do that within Spline. You can choose all sorts of different things, what the ratio is, format, how high quality it is, how quick the shutter speed is. And then you've got time here, and you can change that to fixed. Now we know that our duration of this animation is 5 seconds, so it makes sense to just make this fixed. Then when I click start, what I can do is I can then click the play button and it will record this animation happening. Actually, there is no animation, is there, because I turned off the animation. But then it processes and it will save to your files, which means that you can then embed that video straight onto your website. I'd recommend using something like FlowDrive or something else that means that you can actually compress that first and then host it somewhere that's super fast to load. But you can do that in here as well. Now, responsiveness. If we click on scenes, we've got scene 1 here. You can add different scenes within the same spline file. Say if you're like cutting to different shots to make some kind of animated video or something. But we've just got one scene in here, right? And you see where it says size responsive, auto zoom, yes. If we change this to yes, what happens is when we click play and we click this little resize view, what happens is this whole scene will then resize depending on the size of your screen. So super helpful to note, guys, that you can actually do that within Spline, and it means that just by clicking this on, it saves you a hell of a lot of trouble. When I was learning Spline, oh my god, I mean, it took me so long to find that. So really, really helpful there. You can also do images from here. So let's say we're like, you know what, we want some shots for Instagram, baby, because I'm an Instagram baby. Let's say we want to have shots which are super dynamic. I quite like that. I'm going to click export. Then I'm going to go to image, and I can choose it to be a PNG or a JPEG. Let's just keep the background color and let's just export that. We can suddenly do a lot of cool, interesting things by exporting all these files super fast, guys. So easy to do this. Like, okay, let's just do some product shots, shall we? Let's say we want something that's got some really cool, beautiful product shots. Imagine we had like a watch or a car that we'd made in Spline, and then we wanted to do something, really dynamic for a website. I actually made a really similar kind of thing for iPod. Oh no. Sorry, I'm going to forget what it's called. Let me show you guys. iPod Classic. I don't know if I published the site yet, actually, but let's have a little look together. We've got this kind of Webflow. So this is a Webflow project where I've embedded this iPod Classic in the middle. So this is sticky position, and then on scroll, it basically flips and turns all sorts of directions, right? But down here, what I want to show you is this. So what we've got is we've got loads of product shots of that one asset that I wanted to just show off in different angles, okay? And what's really nice about this is if you've put loads of work into creating an asset and making sure that the corners are tight and beveled and there's some nice textures, overlaying all these different assets, you might want to do something kind of cool with it, and you can do that by just doing a load of screenshots in Spline. Okay, so that's a wrap, guys. We have covered a hell of a lot of ground super, super fast. I hope that was incredibly helpful for you guys to actually see how Spline works and makes you feel a little bit more confident about using the tool as you move forward. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change this back to responsive, and we're back to the start. Wow, kind of a cool asset, huh? Nice.